The rain fell heavy on the tin roofs of San Miguel, a forgotten town where the streets turned to mud every winter and hope dried up every summer. This was a place where children learned hunger before they learned to read, where mothers prayed to saints that never answered, and where young men disappeared into the night, chasing dreams that would consume them whole. Miguel Reyes was 17 when he made the choice that would stain his hands forever. He stood in the doorway of his family's crumbling home, watching his younger sister cough into a rag that had turned pink with blood. Rosa was 12, small for her age, her bones visible through skin that had grown pale as paper. The medicine she needed cost more than his mother earned in 3 months, cleaning houses for families who barely noticed she existed. His mother knelt beside Rosa's mattress, whispering prayers that echoed off bare walls. She had aged a decade in the past year, her hands rough and cracked from bleach and broken promises. His father had been gone for 5 years, swallowed by the same poverty that now threatened to take Rosa. Miguel's fists clenched at his sides. He had tried the honest path. He had worked construction sites where bosses paid half what they promised. He had sold fruit at intersections where police demanded bribes he couldn't afford. He had begged for loans from men who laughed in his face. The world had shown him its truth. Good people starved while bad people prospered. That night he found himself at the corner where dealers whispered to shadows and money changed hands in the dark. He had walked past this place 1,000 times, always looking away, always telling himself he was different. But desperation has a way of rewriting the rules you once thought were sacred. A man named Chato noticed him lingering. Chato was 25 but looked 40, his face scarred from battles Miguel could only imagine. He wore gold chains that caught the streetlight and boots that cost more than Miguel's family earned in a year. "You lost, kid?" Chato's voice carried amusement and threat in equal measure. "I need work." Miguel's voice came out stronger than he felt. Chato studied him with eyes that had seen too many boys like this, boys who thought they were choosing a path when really they were stepping off a cliff. "Work? You mean you need money?" "Same thing?" "No, it's not." Chato lit a cigarette, the flame illuminating his face in the darkness. "Work is what your mother does. Money is what men like me take from people who think work matters." Miguel said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Chato smiled, revealing a gold tooth that gleamed like a promise and a warning. "There's a shipment coming through tomorrow night. We need someone clean, someone the federales don't know yet, someone expendable." The word hung in the air between them. Expendable. Miguel understood what it meant. He understood he was being offered a chance to become exactly what his mother had raised him not to be. But he also understood that Rosa's cough was getting worse, and prayers wouldn't pay for medicine. "What do I have to do?" The warehouse sat on the edge of town, a rusted skeleton of corrugated metal and broken dreams. Miguel arrived at midnight, his heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted to escape before the rest of him learned better. 3 men waited inside. Chato was there, along with 2 others Miguel didn't recognize. One was built like a bull, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories of violence. The other was thin and nervous, his eyes darting to every shadow. "You're late," Chato said, though Miguel had arrived exactly on time. "I'm here." "It doesn't mean shit if you're not ready." Chato gestured to a stack of wooden crates in the corner. "Those need to be moved to a truck outside. You don't look inside. You don't ask questions. You load them, you leave, you forget you were ever here. Understand?" Miguel nodded. Use your words, kid. In this business, nodding gets you killed. I understand. The work was simple, back-breaking but simple. Miguel hauled crates from the warehouse to the truck, his muscles screaming, his mind trying not to imagine what filled the boxes. Drugs, almost certainly, maybe weapons, maybe something worse. The thin man worked beside him, muttering to himself in a way that made Miguel's skin crawl. The bullman stood guard, a pistol tucked into his belt, watching the road with the patience of a predator. They were almost finished when headlights cut through the darkness. Shit! Chato's hand went to his weapon. That's not our ride. The truck that pulled up was unmarked, but everyone knew what it meant. Rivals, thieves, men who had decided that taking was easier than buying. 4 men climbed out, their faces hidden behind bandanas, their hands holding guns that looked like they had ended many conversations before this one. You know the rules, Chato? The voice came from the largest of them, a man whose shoulders blocked out the moon. This territory pays tribute to El Jefe. You trying to run product without permission? Miguel's blood turned to ice. He had heard whispers about El Jefe, the man who controlled the flow of everything illegal within 100 miles, a ghost who sent others to do his killing while he counted money in the mountains. Chato laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell El Jefe he doesn't own every street corner in this town. Tell him Chato remembers when he was nothing but a runner with big dreams and bigger debts. I'll tell him. The large man raised his weapon. Right after I solve your memory problem permanently. Everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. The bullman drew his pistol, but one of the rivals was faster. The gunshot cracked through the night like thunder, and the bullman fell, clutching his chest, blood spreading across his shirt in a dark bloom. Chato returned fire, diving behind the truck. The thin man ran, screaming, and made it 3 steps before bullets found his back. He went down without another sound. Miguel stood frozen, his mind blank with terror, his body refusing every command to move. He was going to die here, 17 years old, in a warehouse full of illegal cargo, killed by men whose faces he couldn't even see. One of the rivals spotted him. The man turned, raising his weapon, and Miguel saw his own death in those eyes. There was no malice there, no anger, just the cold mathematics of eliminating witnesses, time fractured into pieces. Miguel's hand found something cold and heavy on the ground. The bullman's pistol, fallen when he was shot. Miguel's fingers closed around the grip, his body moving on instinct that bypassed thought entirely. He raised the weapon. The rival was faster, more experienced, already squeezing his trigger, but Miguel was desperate, and desperation has its own kind of speed. He fired. The recoil nearly tore the gun from his hands. The sound was deafening, a physical force that seemed to compress the air itself. The muzzle flash lit up the night like a camera, capturing a moment that could never be taken back. The rival stumbled backward, surprise replacing certainty on his face. He looked down at the red stains spreading across his stomach, then back at Miguel, as if trying to understand how a terrified boy had just rewritten the ending of this story. He fell. Miguel stood there, the gun trembling in his hands. Smoke rising from the barrel. He had just killed a man. The thought circled his mind like a vulture, but it couldn't land, couldn't become real. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to carry boxes. He was supposed to get paid. He was supposed to buy medicine for Rosa and go home and pretend he was still the person his mother thought he was. But that person was dead now, too. "Move!" Chato's voice cut through the fog. "Miguel, move!" The surviving rivals were retreating, dragging their wounded with them. Their simple robbery turned into something messier than they had planned. Chateau fired shots that kept them running, his face split between fury and something that might have been respect. Miguel ran to the truck, his legs carrying him without consulting his brain. Chateau gunned the engine, tires screaming against pavement, and they were gone, leaving behind 2 bodies and a future that Miguel could never return to. They drove for an hour before stopping at a safe house on the outskirts of another town. Miguel's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He stared at them like they belonged to someone else, these hands that had taken a life, these hands that still smelled like gunpowder and fear. Chateau poured 2 glasses of whiskey and pushed one toward Miguel. "Drink." Miguel obeyed. The alcohol burned down his throat, but it couldn't touch the cold that had settled in his chest. "You saved my life back there." Chateau's voice was different now, stripped of the mockery. "That was good shooting for your first time?" "I killed him." Miguel's voice came out broken. "I killed a man." "You survived. There's a difference." Chateau drained his glass. "In this world, kid, you don't get points for mercy. You get a bullet and a shallow grave. You did what you had to do." "I didn't have to do anything. I chose to be there. You chose to save your sister." Chateau interrupted. "Don't rewrite history already. You were there because the world gave you shit options and you picked the one that let Rosa live. That man, he was there to kill us and take what wasn't his. You didn't murder anyone. You fought back." Miguel wanted to believe that. He wanted to wrap that justification around himself like armor. But he could still see the surprise in the rival's eyes, could still feel the weight of the trigger, could still hear the sound of a body hitting concrete. "Does it get easier?" The question escaped before Miguel could stop it. Chateau was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something Miguel hadn't heard before: honesty without performance. "No, anyone who tells you it gets easier is either lying or dead inside. You just get better at carrying it." The next morning, Chateau handed Miguel an envelope thick with cash. More money than Miguel had ever seen in his life. Enough for Rosa's medicine and food and rent for months. "This is for the job." Chateau's expression was unreadable. "But there's more if you want it. You proved yourself last night. Men like El Jefe, they don't forgive territory violations. There's going to be a war, and I need soldiers I can trust." Miguel stared at the envelope. Blood money. The price of a man's life converted into bills that could buy medicine and food and temporary peace. "What if I say no?" Chateau shrugged. "Then you walk away. Take the money, save your sister. Go back to selling fruit at intersections. Pretend last night didn't happen." "Can I pretend?" "No." Chateau's answer was immediate and certain. "Those men you fought, they work for El Jefe. Someone survived. Someone saw your face. You think they're going to let that go? You think you can just disappear?" The trap closed around Miguel with the certainty of mathematics. He had stepped into this world to save Rosa, but in doing so he had painted a target on himself that wouldn't fade. Walking away meant living in fear, looking over his shoulder, waiting for revenge that would come eventually. Staying meant becoming something he had never wanted to be. But at least it meant fighting back. "What do you need me to do?" Miguel asked, and with those words he signed away the last piece of the boy he used to be. The months that followed were an education in cruelty. Miguel learned how to move product without being seen, how to read the streets for threats, how to identify undercover police by the way they stood and the shoes they wore. He learned which officials could be bribed and which ones demanded blood. He learned that violence had rules, and breaking those rules brought consequences worse than death. Chateau became his teacher, his guide, into a world that operated by codes, invisible to ordinary people. There were territories that couldn't be crossed, families that couldn't be touched, debts that had to be paid in full or not at all. "This business, it's all about respect and fear," Chateau explained one night as they sat in a car watching a rival's warehouse. "You need both. Respect without fear makes you soft. Fear without respect makes you a target. You balance them and you survive." Miguel absorbed these lessons like a student at university, except his textbooks were written in blood and his tests ended with body bags. He was good at it, better than he wanted to admit. He had a mind for strategy, for seeing patterns others missed, for understanding that in this world, paranoia was just another word for survival instinct. Rosa's health improved, the medicine worked, color returning to her cheeks, strength to her limbs. She asked Miguel where the money came from, her eyes too knowing for a 12-year-old. He lied. He told her he had found work at a warehouse, night shifts that paid well. She didn't believe him. He could see that. But she was alive because of his choices. That had to count for something. His mother noticed the change in him too, the way he carried himself differently now, harder, colder, the way he flinched at unexpected sounds, the way he sometimes stared at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. "Mijo," she said one evening, her voice heavy with worry and love. "What have you done?" "What I had to do." Miguel couldn't meet her eyes. "Rosa's alive, isn't she? We have food. We have a future." "But what future do you have?" Her question cut deeper than any accusation. "What life are you building with blood money?" Miguel had no answer for that. Or maybe he did, but he couldn't speak it aloud. He was building a life where his family didn't starve, where they didn't lose Rosa to a disease that only killed poor people, where they had power, however dark its source. The first kill haunted his dreams. He saw the rival's face every night, saw the surprise and betrayal as if Miguel had broken some promise they had never made. In his dreams the man spoke, asking why, asking what gave Miguel the right, asking if Rosa's life was worth more than his. Miguel always woke before he could answer. 6 months after that first night, Chateau made Miguel his lieutenant. It was a promotion born from blood and capability. Miguel had proven himself in skirmishes with El Jefe's crews, had shown he could think under pressure, could make decisions that kept people alive when dying seemed certain. The war with El Jefe had escalated from territory disputes to personal vendetta. Bodies appeared in the streets with messages carved into flesh. Families were threatened. Alliances shifted like sand. Miguel coordinated movements of men and product, planned routes that avoided ambushes, identified traitors before they could betray. He was becoming the thing he had feared, a criminal with power, a killer with purpose. He told himself it was temporary. Just until they won the war, just until Rosa was completely healthy, just until his mother could stop working herself to death. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when the alternative is death. One night, Chateau called him to a meeting at a restaurant that served as neutral ground. The owner was paid handsomely to ensure no weapons entered, no violence occurred within these walls. It was one of the few places where enemies could sit across from each other and talk instead of shoot. El Jefe's representative was there, a man named Sebastian who dressed like a businessman and spoke like a professor. He had the kind of face that belonged in a bank, not in a room negotiating the price of peace. "Your boss is causing problems," Sebastian said, sipping wine as if they were discussing weather. El Jefe is a patient man, but patience has limits. This war is bad for everyone's business. Miguel kept his face neutral. He had learned not to react, not to give away anger or fear or any emotion that could be weaponized against him. Chateau didn't start this. Your people came to our warehouse. Your people drew first blood. Territory has owners. You don't run product through someone else's territory without permission. That's basic business. Since when does El Jefe own the entire state? Sebastian smiled. It was the smile of a man who knew secrets that others would kill to learn. Since he decided to. Power isn't granted, Miguel. It's taken and held. Your boss knows this. The question is whether he's willing to die for pride or live for profit. What are you offering? A partnership. Chateau keeps his operations, but he pays El Jefe a percentage, 20% of everything that moves. In exchange, El Jefe provides protection, distribution networks, political connections. Chateau stays alive and gets richer. Everyone wins. Miguel understood the translation, submit or die. And this wasn't a negotiation. It was a choice between slavery and war. I'll bring it to Chateau. You do that. Sebastian stood, straightening his expensive suit. But Miguel, understand something. El Jefe doesn't make offers twice. This is generosity. Next time it's just business. That night, Miguel presented the terms to Chateau. They sat in the safe house, in the same place where Miguel had first tasted whiskey and tried to wash away the memory of his first kill. Chateau listened in silence, his face carved from stone. When Miguel finished, Chateau poured 2 drinks and pushed one across the table. "What do you think I should do?" Chateau asked. Miguel was surprised by the question. In the 6 months he had worked for Chateau, this was the first time his boss had asked his opinion on something that mattered. "I think 20% is slavery," Miguel said carefully. "But I also think we're bleeding money and men with this war. We can't win against El Jefe. He has too many soldiers, too many connections. We kill one of his lieutenants, and he has 3 more. We take 1 territory, and he takes 2 of ours." "So you think I should kneel?" There was no judgment in Chateau's voice, only curiosity. "I think you should survive. 20% is better than 100% of nothing when you're dead." Chateau laughed, but it was bitter. "You know what the difference is between you and me, kid? I came up in this life when respect meant something, when a man's word was law and territory was earned through courage, not compromised through cowardice. You're practical, you see the math, and you're probably right. But you're not going to accept." "No." Chateau drained his glass. "I'm not. Because the moment I accept El Jefe's terms, I'm not a boss anymore. I'm a tax collector for someone else's empire. And I didn't survive this long by bowing to men who think might makes right." Miguel felt ice settle in his stomach. He knew what this meant. Chateau was choosing death over submission. It was noble and stupid in equal measure. "Then we prepare for war," Miguel said. "No." Chateau's eyes met his. "You prepare to survive what comes next." 3 weeks later, Miguel received a call in the middle of the night. The voice on the other end was Sebastian, calm and professional as always. "Chateau is dead. El Jefe sends his regards and his offer. You can take over Chateau's operations under the same terms we discussed. 20%, protection and a future. Or you can die with him in principle." Miguel's world tilted. "You're lying." "Check the news, check the morgue. Your boss thought he could ambush one of our shipments. He thought wrong. He died well, if that matters. Fought to the end." The line went dead. Miguel turned on the television with hands that had gone numb. The news confirmed what he didn't want to believe. Shootout on the highway, 3 dead. Chato's face filled the screen, younger in the photograph than the man Miguel had known, smiling like someone who still believed the world could be conquered. Miguel sat in darkness, processing the reality that had just reshaped his life. Chato was gone. The man who had given him his first job, his first kill, his education in this brutal world, was dead. Killed for pride, for refusal to kneel, for believing that respect mattered more than survival. And now Miguel was being offered everything Chato had fought to preserve. The practical part of his mind, the part that had grown strong in these months of violence, calculated the options. Accept El Jefe's offer and become a boss in his own right, wealthy and protected. Refuse and die meaninglessly, another body in a war that had already been lost. But there was another part of him, smaller and quieter, that remembered why he had entered this world. To save Rosa, to protect his family. He had achieved that goal. His sister was healthy. His mother had security. He could walk away, take the money he had saved and disappear. Start over somewhere El Jefe's reach didn't extend, except El Jefe's reach extended everywhere, and walking away meant abandoning the men who had followed Chato, who now looked to Miguel for leadership or vengeance. The phone rang again. This time it was one of Chato's crew, a man named Luis, who had been with them from the beginning. "Miguel, what do we do?" Luis's voice shook with fear and fury. "They killed him. They fucking killed him. We have to hit back. We have to survive," Miguel interrupted. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, harder than Chato's had ever been. Chato made his choice. He died for it. We can die too, or we can adapt. "You're talking about accepting El Jefe's terms?" Luis sounded betrayed. "After what they did? I'm talking about living to fight another day. Chato taught me that this business is about respect and fear. Right now, we have neither. El Jefe has both. We can't win this war, but we can survive it." The silence on the other end felt like judgment. "Chato would be ashamed," Luis finally said. "Chato is dead," Miguel replied, "and I don't intend to join him." Miguel met with Sebastian the next evening at the same restaurant where they had negotiated before. This time, the conversation was shorter. "I accept the terms, 20% protection, distribution rights, but I want guarantees. My family doesn't get touched. My mother, my sister, they're civilians. They stay that way." Sebastian nodded as if this was expected. El Jefe respects family. They'll be protected, not targeted. You have his word. "And the men who worked for Chato?" "They work for you now. As long as they follow the new rules, they live. Anyone who wants revenge more than money gets to join Chato in the ground. Make that clear." Miguel understood. He was being given power, but it came with the responsibility of crushing dissent among his own ranks. He would have to become the enforcer of El Jefe's will, ensuring compliance through force, if necessary. When does this start? Now. Sebastian slid a phone across the table. "El Jefe wants to speak with you directly, to welcome you to the family." Miguel stared at the phone like it was a snake. Once he picked it up, there would be no going back. He would be bound to El Jefe not by force but by choice, by the acceptance of terms that made him a willing participant in an empire built on suffering. He picked up the phone. The voice that greeted him was smooth and educated, a voice that could have belonged to a politician or a professor. "Miguel, I've heard impressive things about you. Young, smart, ruthless when necessary, but not reckless. Exactly the kind of man this organization needs." "Thank you." Miguel kept his voice neutral. Chato was a good man, in his way. Old school. Too proud for his own good. But he taught you well, and that's worth something. You understand that this business isn't personal, it's economic. Emotional decisions get people killed. Smart decisions get people paid. I understand. Good. Because I'm trusting you with significant territory and responsibility. You'll oversee all operations in the Southern Corridor. You'll report to Sebastian, but day-to-day decisions are yours. 20% comes off the top, delivered first of every month. No exceptions, no excuses. Understood. There's one more thing. El Jefe's voice sharpened slightly. In this organization, loyalty is everything. Betray me, and it's not just you who pays, it's everyone you love. Your mother, your sister, everyone. I don't make threats, Miguel. I make promises. As long as you're loyal, your family gets protected, but traitors get erased. Am I clear? Crystal clear. Excellent. Welcome to the family. The line went dead. Miguel sat in silence, staring at the phone in his hand. He had just sworn allegiance to a man he had never met, a ghost who controlled an empire from the shadows. He had become exactly what he swore he would never be, a criminal by choice, not desperation. But Rosa was alive, his mother was safe. And he had power now, real power, the kind that could protect them from the chaos that had consumed Chato. He told himself that was enough. The first year under El Jefe's umbrella transformed Miguel from a street soldier into a businessman of violence. He learned to manage supply chains, to negotiate with corrupt officials, to launder money through legitimate businesses. He discovered that the cartel world was more bureaucracy than bullets, more spreadsheets than shootouts. But the violence was always there, lurking beneath the surface like a shark in dark water. Miguel enforced El Jefe's rules with precision and brutality when necessary. Men who skimmed profits disappeared. Rival dealers who encroached on territory received warnings carved into flesh. Local police who forgot their bribes found their families threatened. He became feared, which was the same as being respected in this world. His crew grew. Young men like he had been, desperate and angry, looking for a way out of poverty that only led them deeper into darkness. Miguel recognized himself in their faces, but he couldn't save them any more than Chato could have saved him. This was the cycle. Poverty created desperation. Desperation created criminals. Criminals created violence. And violence created more poverty. Round and round, generation after generation, a wheel that ground human lives into profit for men like El Jefe. Miguel moved his mother and Rosa to a better neighborhood, a house with walls that didn't leak and rooms that stayed warm in winter. He told his mother the money came from a security business he had started. She didn't believe him, but she accepted the lie because Rosa was healthy and they were safe. Rosa asked fewer questions now. At 14, she had learned that ignorance was sometimes safer than knowledge. She studied hard, dreamed of university, spoke about becoming a doctor. Miguel supported those dreams with money that had blood in its history. He tried not to think about the contradiction. The medicine that saved Rosa had come from his first kill. The house they lived in was built on countless crimes. Her future was funded by destroying other families' futures. But logic and morality were luxuries Miguel couldn't afford. He had made his choices. Or he lived with them by not looking too closely at what they meant. 2 years into his partnership with El Jefe, Miguel faced a test that would define his future in the organization. A shipment had been intercepted by federal police, millions of dollars in products seized. This should have been impossible. The route was secure, the officials paid, the timing perfect. Someone had talked, someone had betrayed the organization. El Jefe demanded answers. More importantly, he demanded an example. Sebastian delivered the message personally. "We know who it was. One of your men, a kid named Tomas. He's been feeding information to the Federales for 3 months. They promised him immunity, relocation, a new life. The stupid ones always believe those promises." Miguel felt something cold settle in his chest. He knew Tomas, a 19-year-old who had joined the crew 6 months ago, eager and loyal, or so Miguel had thought. He had reminded Miguel of himself at that age, desperate to prove himself worthy. "What do you want me to do?" Miguel asked, though he already knew. "What do you think? He betrayed the organization. He cost us millions. He needs to be made an example." Sebastian's eyes were flat and cold. "And it needs to be you who does it. El Jefe wants to know you're committed, that you understand loyalty above all else." Miguel understood what was really happening. This was a test. El Jefe wanted to see if Miguel had fully crossed over, if he was willing to personally execute someone from his own crew. It was one thing to order violence. It was another to deliver it yourself. Where is he? "Safe house on the east side. We've been holding him, waiting for your decision." "Well, not really a decision. More like your compliance." That night, Miguel drove to the safe house with a weight in his stomach that felt like swallowed stones. 2 of El Jefe's enforcers waited outside, their presence making clear that this wasn't optional. Tomas sat in a chair, his hands tied, his face bruised from interrogation. When he saw Miguel, hope flickered in his eyes, desperate and doomed. "Miguel, please. They're lying about me. I never talked to the Federales. I'm loyal. You know me. You know I wouldn't." "Stop." Miguel's voice came out harder than he intended. "They have recordings. They have proof. Don't insult both of us by lying." Tomas's face crumpled. The hope died, replaced by terror. "They promised me witness protection. They said my family would be safe. I couldn't do this anymore. The things we do, the people we hurt. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't look at myself." Miguel understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. How many nights had he stared at the ceiling, replaying moments of violence, wondering when he had stopped being human and become something else? "You made a choice," Miguel said quietly. "Choices have consequences. Please." Tomas was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "I'm 19 years old. I made a mistake. I just wanted out. Please, Miguel, you're not like them. You still have humanity left. I can see it. Please." Miguel drew his weapon. The gun felt heavier than it should, as if it was made of all the choices that had led him to this moment. The first kill that started it all had been self-defense, survival, an accident of desperation. And this was different. This was murder in cold blood, execution as loyalty test, killing someone who had once trusted him. "Close your eyes," Miguel said. Tomas obeyed, whispering prayers in a voice broken by terror. Miguel raised the weapon. His hand didn't shake. That was the worst part. He had done this enough times that his body no longer protested. The physical act of killing had become mechanical, muscle memory, no different than any other learned skill. He thought about walking away, about refusing this test, about choosing humanity over power. But El Jefe's promise echoed in his mind. "Betray me, and everyone you love pays the price." If Miguel refused, Rosa would die, his mother would die. Everyone he had sacrificed his soul to protect would be erased. One life versus many, the cold mathematics of survival. Miguel pulled the trigger. The sound echoed in the small room, final and absolute. Tomas slumped forward, his prayers cut short, his blood pooling on the concrete floor. Miguel stood there, staring at what he had done. Another body, another ghost for his dreams. Another piece of himself carved away and discarded. One of El Jefe's enforcers stepped forward, phone in hand. "He wants to speak with you." Miguel took the phone with hands that had stopped shaking years ago. "It's done?" El Jefe's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Yes." "Good. I know that wasn't easy, Miguel, but leadership requires hard choices. Tomas betrayed us all. You did what was necessary. You protected the family. I'm proud of you." Proud. The word tasted like poison. Miguel had just executed a 19-year-old kid, and the monster who ordered it was proud. "Thank you," Miguel said, because what else could he say? "This organization needs men like you, men who understand that loyalty isn't abstract. It's proven through action. You've proven yourself today. Rest assured, your future here is secure." The line went dead. Miguel drove home in silence, the gun still warm in his jacket pocket, Tomas's blood still wet on his clothes. He stopped at a bridge over a river and stood there, staring into dark water, wondering if he jumped, whether the current would be strong enough to wash away what he had become. But he didn't jump. He had people depending on him. Rosa was applying to universities. His mother was finally getting medical treatment for problems she had ignored for years. The men in his crew had families to feed. He had sold his soul to protect them. It was too late to ask for a refund. The execution of Tomas cemented Miguel's position in El Jefe's organization. Word spread that he was ruthless, loyal, willing to do whatever was necessary. This reputation brought opportunity and danger in equal measure. El Jefe expanded Miguel's territory, giving him control over 3 additional corridors. With expansion came responsibility, complexity, and exposure. More men to manage, more risks to calculate, more potential for catastrophic failure. Miguel built his organization with the same precision he brought to everything. He promoted based on competence, not friendship. He paid well but demanded absolute loyalty. He created systems that reduced risk and maximized profit. He became wealthy, not El Jefe wealthy, but comfortable in ways that would have seemed impossible when he was 17 and desperate. He bought properties under shell companies, invested in legitimate businesses, created a facade of respectability over a foundation of crime. His mother asked fewer questions. Either she didn't want to know, or she had accepted that her son was lost to a world she couldn't enter. Rosa graduated high school with honors and received a scholarship to university. She would become a doctor just as she dreamed, her education funded by blood money that she could pretend didn't exist. Miguel attended her graduation, sitting in the back row, watching her receive awards and accolades. She looked so different from the sick child he had been desperate to save. Strong, healthy, full of future. She found him afterward, her eyes searching his face with the intensity of someone who knew they were looking at a stranger wearing a familiar face. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. I know what you did, what you became. I'm not stupid, Miguel." "You don't know anything." He kept his voice gentle. "I know enough. I know the medicine that saved my life cost more than money. I know the house we live in and the school I attended and the future I have all came from choices you made. Choices that destroyed who you used to be." Miguel had no response. She was right, and they both knew it. "I'm going to be a doctor," Rosa continued, her voice fierce with determination. "I'm going to save lives. I'm going to help people the way you helped me. And maybe that can balance the scales. Maybe the good I do can somehow offset the cost of what you sacrificed to give me this chance." "That's not how it works." Miguel's voice came out tired. "The world doesn't balance. Good doesn't cancel evil. It just is. You live with it or you don't. Then I'll live with it. Rosa hugged him, and for a moment Miguel felt almost human again. But I won't forget what it cost. I promise you that. She walked away, back to friends and celebration, and a future that Miguel had purchased with pieces of his soul. He watched her go, wondering if the price had been worth it. 5 years into his partnership with El Jefe, Miguel controlled one of the largest operations in the state. He employed hundreds of men, moved millions in product, corrupted dozens of officials. He was powerful, feared, wealthy. He was also empty. The violence had become routine. Bodies appeared and disappeared with the regularity of scheduled maintenance. Miguel ordered executions the way other people ordered coffee, with the same emotional investment. He had learned to compartmentalize, to separate the human cost from the business necessity. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, the ghosts visited. Tomas appeared most often, eternally 19, eternally praying, eternally betrayed. But he wasn't alone. The rival from the warehouse, the first kill that started it all. Chato dead because he refused to kneel. Dozens of others, faces and names blurring together into a river of blood that Miguel couldn't cross. He started drinking more, not enough to impair his work, but enough to quiet the voices in his head that asked uncomfortable questions about meaning and purpose, and whether survival was the same thing as living. Sebastian noticed. They met for their monthly accounting, and when business was finished, Sebastian poured expensive scotch and studied Miguel with eyes that missed nothing. "You're burning out," Sebastian said. It wasn't a question. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. I've seen it before. Men who are good at this work but hate what they've become. It's a dangerous combination, makes you sloppy, makes you vulnerable." "I'm not sloppy. Not yet. But you're questioning, doubting, starting to wonder if the price was worth it." Sebastian sipped his drink. "Let me save you the philosophical crisis. It wasn't worth it. Nothing is. But that's not the point. You made your choices. You live with them or you die with them. There's no third option." "What if I walk away?" Miguel asked, surprised by his own question. Sebastian laughed without humor. "Walk away to where? You think El Jefe just lets people retire? You know too much, control too much, matter too much. The only way out is in a box. Or witness protection, like Tomas tried." "How did that work out for him?" Sebastian's eyes were cold. "You killed him yourself. Did that teach you nothing? There's no escape, Miguel. You're in this until the end. Make peace with that or go crazy fighting it. Either way, the work continues." Miguel finished his drink in silence. Sebastian was right. He was trapped in a web of his own weaving, bound by choices made when he was 17 and desperate. The boy who wanted to save his sister had become a man who destroyed families. The transformation was complete. The beginning of the end started with a routine shipment that went wrong in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Federal police intercepted a transport truck carrying $20 million in product. Not just intercepted, ambushed, like they knew exactly when and where it would be. 3 of Miguel's men were killed in the firefight. The survivor reported that the federales knew their names, knew the route, knew everything. Another leak, another betrayal. Sebastian appeared at Miguel's office the next morning, his face grim. "El Jefe wants this handled immediately. Someone in your organization is talking. Find them. Make an example." Miguel began the investigation with the thoroughness of a man who understood his own life depended on the results. He reviewed communications, tracked movements, interviewed crew members with the gentleness of a surgeon and the precision of an executioner. The evidence pointed to someone impossible. Luis. Luis, who had been with Chato from the beginning. Luis, who had questioned Miguel's decision to accept El Jefe's terms but had ultimately stayed loyal. Luis, who Miguel had trusted with his life 12 times over. But the proof was undeniable. Phone records, bank transfers, meetings with federal agents. Luis had been feeding information to the authorities for 6 months, carefully, methodically, building a case that could bring down the entire organization. Miguel confronted him in the same safe house where he had killed Tomás. The symmetry was not lost on him. Luis sat calmly, no tears, no denials. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." "Why?" Miguel's voice was barely audible. "Because Chato deserved better. Because every day I stayed silent, I betrayed his memory. Because you were supposed to avenge him, not join his killers." Luis's eyes held no fear, only disgust. "You became everything he fought against, and I couldn't watch anymore. So you betrayed the crew, betrayed everyone who trusted you. I'm trying to save them, save you, if you're not too far gone." Luis leaned forward. "Miguel, when was the last time you looked at yourself and recognized who you saw? When was the last time you slept through the night? You're dying inside, piece by piece, and you call it survival." Miguel wanted to argue, wanted to defend his choices, wanted to explain how he had saved Rosa and protected his mother and built something from nothing. But the words wouldn't come because Luis was right. "It doesn't matter," Miguel finally said. "You know what happens now." "I know, but before you pull that trigger, answer one question. Was it worth it? Everything you sacrificed, everyone you killed, all the pieces of yourself you cut away. Was your sister's life worth all that death?" Miguel raised his weapon. "Yes." But his hand shook. This was different from Tomás. Luis wasn't a frightened kid who made a stupid mistake. Luis was a true believer, a man who had chosen conscience over survival, who was willing to die for principles that Miguel had abandoned years ago. "If you kill me, you prove my point," Luis said quietly. "You prove that there's nothing left of the kid who just wanted to save his sister, that Miguel Reyes died in that warehouse 5 years ago, and what's left is just a ghost pretending to be alive." "Stop talking." Miguel's voice broke. "Make me. Pull the trigger. Prove to yourself that you're beyond redemption." Miguel stood there, weapon raised, finger on the trigger, paralyzed by a question he couldn't answer. Was Luis right? Had he died in that warehouse, killed by the same bullet that ended his first victim's life? Was everything since then just momentum, a corpse moving forward because it hadn't realized it was dead? His phone rang. "Sebastian." "Is it done?" "No." Miguel lowered his weapon. "I can't." The silence on the other end felt like judgment. "El Jefe won't accept that." "I know." "Then you know what comes next. For him, for you, for everyone you love." Miguel looked at Luis, saw understanding in his eyes. "Yeah, I know." He hung up. Miguel had 48 hours before El Jefe's enforcers came for him. Not long enough to run, not long enough to hide, but maybe long enough to do one decent thing before the end. He called Rosa from a burner phone, his voice urgent. "You need to leave. Tonight. Take Mother, take everything you can carry, and disappear." "Miguel, what's happening?" "I made a choice. It's going to have consequences, but you don't have to pay for my mistakes. There's money in an account. I'm texting you the details. Take it and go. Canada, Europe, anywhere but here. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice." His voice cracked with desperation. "Rosa, I saved your life once. Let me save it again. Please." The line was quiet for a long moment. When Rosa spoke, Her voice was steady despite the tears. I love you, brother. Whatever happens, I love you. I love you too. Now go. He hung up before she could argue further. Next, he called a meeting with his crew. 30 men assembled in an abandoned factory, confused and wary. Miguel stood before them, the weight of 5 years pressing down on his shoulders. I'm done, he said simply. I made a decision that El Jefe won't forgive. In 48 hours, maybe less, his people will come for me. Anyone standing beside me when they arrive will die too, so I'm releasing you, all of you. Take what you can, scatter, disappear, find legitimate work or join another crew, but don't die for me. I'm not worth it. The men exchanged glances, uncertain. One of the younger ones, a kid named Marcos, stepped forward. What did you do? I refused to kill someone who didn't deserve to die. I chose humanity over loyalty. El Jefe considers that unforgivable. Another man, older, scarred, spoke up. After everything you've done, all the people you've killed, you draw the line now? Better late than never, Miguel said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The crew dispersed slowly, some grateful for the release. Others angry at the betrayal, most just confused. Within an hour, the factory was empty except for Miguel and the ghosts of choices he couldn't undo. He drove to the bridge where he had stood years ago, after killing Tomás, wondering if he had the courage to jump. The water below still looked dark and cold and final. Luis appeared beside him, released from the safe house with explicit instructions to disappear. You saved my life. I couldn't take another one. I'm full up on ghosts. What will you do now? Miguel laughed bitterly. Wait. El Jefe will send his people. They'll kill me as an example. The cycle continues. Or you run. You have resources, connections. You could disappear. To where? This business, it's everywhere. El Jefe has reach in every country that matters. And even if I found somewhere safe, what then? I live with the weight of everyone I killed? I pretend I'm something other than a monster? Luis was quiet for a moment. You're not a monster, Miguel. Monsters don't feel guilt. They don't sacrifice themselves to save others. You made terrible choices, but you made them for reasons that mattered to you. That's not evil. It's just human. Being human got me here. Maybe I should have been a monster from the start. Might have been easier. Easier isn't the same as better. They stood in silence. 2 men who had seen too much, done too much, survived too long in a world that ground human lives into profit and power. For what it's worth, Luis said, thank you for choosing mercy when it cost you everything. That took more courage than all the violence you've committed. Miguel didn't feel courageous. He felt tired. 5 years of running from himself had caught up, and he had nowhere left to go. Sebastian came for him on the 3rd day, not with enforcers, not with violence, but alone, driving an expensive car and wearing the expression of a man attending a funeral. They met at the same restaurant where Miguel had first accepted El Jefe's terms. The owner had been paid to ensure privacy. El Jefe wants to see you personally, Sebastian said. That's either mercy or curiosity. Hard to tell with him. I thought he'd just send killers. He still might. But he wants to hear your reasoning first. He's disappointed. He thought you understood how this world works. They drove for 2 hours into the mountains, through checkpoints guarded by men with military weapons, past estates that belonged to ghosts and criminals and people who were both. The deeper they went, the more Miguel understood that this was El Jefe's kingdom, built on fear and maintained through violence that most people would never see. The mansion was modest by Cartel standards, but it radiated power through restraint. guards everywhere, watching with eyes that had seen death and delivered it, security systems that could detect threats before they materialized. El Jefe waited in a library, surrounded by books that Miguel suspected had never been read. He was older than Miguel expected, maybe 60, with grey hair and a face that could have belonged to a professor or a doctor. Nothing about him screamed criminal mastermind. He looked like someone's grandfather. Miguel. El Jefe's voice was the same as on the phone years ago, smooth and educated. Sit, we have much to discuss. Miguel sat, aware that armed men waited just outside the door. You released Luis. El Jefe said it as a statement, not a question. A man who betrayed this organization, who cost us millions, who endangered every operation we run, you let him walk away. Yes. Why? Miguel had prepared answers, justifications, explanations. But sitting here, facing the man whose approval he had sought for 5 years, he found he didn't care about defending himself anymore. Because I'm tired of killing people. Because Luis was right about me, about this life, about everything. Because I looked at him and saw the last chance to be something other than a murderer, and I took it. El Jefe studied him, with eyes that seemed to see through flesh into whatever passed for Miguel's soul. Do you know what separates successful men from failures in this business? It's not ruthlessness. Any idiot can be cruel. It's consistency, the ability to follow through on commitments even when it's difficult. You made a commitment to me, to this organization, and you broke it. Miguel met his gaze without flinching. I did, and I'd do it again. El Jefe leaned back, a slight smile playing at his lips. Why? You've killed dozens of men for me. What made this one different? Because all those others I told myself I had no choice. I told myself it was survival, necessity, business. But with Luis, I had a choice, and I chose to be human instead of a monster. Maybe too late to matter, but I chose. Humanity is a luxury in this business, Miguel. It gets people killed. Then kill me. Miguel's voice was steady. Dini, but my family walks away clean. That was your promise. Loyalty for protection. I was loyal for 5 years. Honor that, and we're done. El Jefe studied him for a long moment. You really don't fear death, do you? I've been dead since that warehouse 5 years ago. I just didn't realize it until now. The old man stood, walking to the window that overlooked mountains bathed in golden sunset light. I'm going to tell you a story, Miguel. 20 years ago, I was like you. Smart, capable, willing to do what needed to be done. I had a family I protected, a wife, 2 daughters. I told myself every terrible thing I did was for them. He paused, his reflection ghostly in the glass. One day, my youngest daughter asked me what I did for work. She was 8 years old, innocent, trusting, and I looked at her and realized I couldn't answer. Because if I told her the truth, she would see me for what I was, a monster. So I lied. And every day after I lied. Until one day, she found out the truth anyway. She was 17. She looked at me with such disgust, such betrayal. And then she left. I haven't seen her in 15 years. El Jefe turned back to face Miguel. You think you're saving your family by building this empire of blood? You're destroying them. Every choice you make in their name pushes them further from who you used to be. Rosa will become a doctor with blood money. Your mother will die knowing she raised a killer, and you'll die alone, surrounded by wealth built on corpses. So what are you saying? I'm saying I see myself in you, and I'm giving you something I never got. A way out. El Jefe's voice softened almost imperceptibly.
Take your family and disappear. I'll tell my people you're dead. You give up everything, the territory, the money, the power. You become nobody, but you live. And maybe, just maybe, you get to keep the people you claimed you were protecting." Miguel stared at him, searching for the trap. "Why would you do that?" "Because that daughter I lost? She would be about Rosa's age now. And maybe if someone had given me this choice 20 years ago, I would have taken it. Consider it an old man's sentimentality. Or consider it proof that even monsters have regrets." Miguel left the mansion with Sebastian, who drove him back in silence. As they descended the mountain, Sebastian finally spoke. He's never done that before.
Given someone a way out. Maybe he's getting soft. Or maybe he sees the cycle ending and wants to believe one person can escape it. Sebastian glanced at him. "Don't waste this chance, Miguel. Men like us, we don't get second chances." "What about you? You ever think about getting out?" Sebastian laughed bitterly. "I'm too far gone. I cross lines you haven't even seen yet. But you? You still have some humanity left. Luis was right about that." They parted ways at the edge of town. Miguel had 48 hours to disappear before El Jefe's mercy expired and the organization's memory adjusted to his death. He called Rosa from a secure line. "Pack everything. We leave tonight." "Where are we going?" "Away. Somewhere clean. Somewhere we can start over." "Miguel, what about your work? It's over. All of it."
I'm done." There was a long pause. When Rosa spoke again, her voice cracked with emotion. "The brother I remember, the one who saved my life. Is that who you are now?" "I'm trying to be." "Then I'm ready. We all are." 6 months later, the coastal town in Costa Rica had no name Miguel could pronounce. It was small, quiet, the kind of place where nothing happened, and everyone preferred it that way. He worked construction now, legitimate this time. The money was honest and insufficient, but it was clean. His hands, calloused and scarred, built things instead of destroying them. Rosa was enrolled in university, studying medicine as she always dreamed. She video called him every week, her face bright with purpose and possibility. She never asked about the past, and he never volunteered. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way.
While his mother had found peace in the small house Miguel rented. She tended a garden, attended church, smiled more than she had in years. She knew what Miguel had been, what he had done, but she chose to see what he was trying to become. Luis had sent one message through an encrypted channel. "You did the right thing. Not many get to choose redemption. Don't waste it." Miguel hadn't responded, but he thought about those words every day. At night, the ghosts still visited. Tomas, the first victim, Chato, all the nameless faces whose lives had ended at his command. They would never leave. Some debts couldn't be repaid, some sins couldn't be forgiven. But Miguel was learning to carry them differently. Not as justifications or necessities, but as reminders. Of the cost of every choice, of the weight of every action, and of the boy he had been, and the man he had become, and the person he was trying to be. He stood on the beach one evening, watching the sun set over water that stretched forever. The ocean was nothing like the dark river he had stood over years ago, contemplating an ending. This water was clear, alive with light. Rosa appeared beside him, having finished her studies for the day. "What are you thinking about?" "The first kill that started it all," Miguel said quietly. "The choice I made in that warehouse. I saved your life, but I lost my own." Rosa took his hand. "And now?" "Now I'm trying to find it again, one honest day at a time." She squeezed his hand. "Then I'll help. We all will. Because you saved me, Miguel. twice, once with the medicine, eaten once by choosing to stop being the person the path was turning you into. They stood in silence, brother and sister, survivors of a war that had consumed so many. The sun dipped below the horizon, darkness rising to claim the sky. But in the east, barely visible, the first stars were emerging. Miguel had learned that in this world, redemption wasn't granted. It was earned, day by day, choice by choice, through the quiet work of becoming something other than what violence had made you. The first kill had started everything, the descent into darkness, the transformation into a monster, the empire built on blood. But maybe the last choice, the decision to walk away, could start something else, something that might one day feel like peace,